The main thing that like we are here for in terms of brand solutions. So to the marketing students out there, if you could like tell us about what is brand solutions management, and then we'll go into what specifically you do in that profile for Sony Pictures.
Sure. Nikhil, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure to be discussing with you over this podcast and sharing knowledge which I feel could be of use collectively to the marketing fraternity, right? So it's been some time that I've been in the brand solution space and working for Sony Pictures. And what I've realized is that brand solutions as a specific field of work entails not just to cater to the advertising problems or advertising needs of the different clients. And these clients could be coming on whatever medium we're talking about. It could be radio, it could be print, it could be OTT, it could be TV, it could be even an amalgamation of all these mediums.
Mhm.
So brands have created their products or created the services. Now they need the right channels so that their salience or their business objectives can be fulfilled.
Mhm.
Here is where brand solutions as a domain comes into the picture, and this domain brings in the tricks and techniques of marketing, of content, of platform, of martech, so that an integrated solution can be created for these clients. And this could be specific to a platform, and this could be a culmination of different platforms. So the kind of work that we did on KBC, the kind of works that you would be seeing on Indian Idol, on Shark Tank. Now these are not just plain Jane touch points. These are all integrated solutions where the brand is getting relevant touch points in terms of impact and in terms of frequency. So essentially, at the crux of brand solutions, we're bringing the brands to the fore in terms of the TG that they're looking for. So there's a seamless connect in terms of what the client is looking for in terms of the audience and what our content or the content of any platform is catering to. Hence, there is a solve for the brand, and not just for their advertising needs, but also for their business. Because the advertising of today, if done effectively, can cater to a potential business outcome for them tomorrow. This, in essence, is brand solutions.
That's right. Would you define it's not a part of advertising, right? Like it's part of the content. Like generally advertising is perceived as disruptive. Like you have had like say you have a half an hour show, then you'll have like 2-3 ad breaks that are there. So here it's part of it. I think it came about also because people when an ad would come down, they would not pay attention. That obviously take a break at that time.
Yeah.
And I've even heard like even in the online world there is something like ad cutters and all, or something
Ad
like
blockers,
online blockers. So I think that is the reason it should be a part of your content and the narrative of the show.
Absolutely.
And then you can kind of reach a better basically.
Very well pointed out, Nikhil. See, gone are the times where advertising would just be associated with those plain Jane touch points, whether it's an OH poster or whether it is an ad spot on a radio or ad spot on TV or ad spot on OTT. That is an absolute hygiene. Brand managers of today or content creators of today are aspiring for a lot of seamlessly done integrations, so that if my content is gripping enough, my brand should find a very subtle involvement in that, because the brand is riding onto the stickiness of the content. And it shouldn't be completely in your face, which really becomes jarring. You rightly pointed out that during ad breaks, people often tune out to different programs. They watch different content.
That's right.
So my lever of getting the eyeballs or getting the consumer's attention is good content. If I'm in place in terms of good, catchy, gripping content, say for example Shark Tank, right? The pitches, people are really involved in that. Or say in terms of Sony Sports, let's say Ashes, which is currently happening. Roland Garros, for example. So my content is gripping enough. How can I create those touch points, or how can I seamlessly create those ways in which my brand is making not just sense in terms of their product or services, but it's also adding a very symbiotic relationship to the content. And here is where it just moves out from a plain Jane advertising bit to a seamless content integration bit. Think in terms of advertiser funded programs, AFP, which we call in the common media parlance, Unacademy, or the pitchers, so TVF pitchers. So one advertiser would fund in the creation of the entire content piece, and the storyline would be very seamlessly integrated across episodes. And this is also exactly what we aspire to do in shows like Tarak Mehta or Wagri Ki Duniya or other fiction-based shows. So that's how it's very seamlessly associated with the content.
That's it. So But that's a difference from like a title sponsorship, right? Like the whole show is being designed for that, and there'll be many touch points there. Right?
Absolutely.
That's the
Absolutely.
okay difference.
Yeah.
Um,
Usually, title sponsorship entails, a deal value which is high enough for them to, take that value.
That's right.
And in accordance to that, we give them, sort of touch points which are much more impactful, which are much more elaborated throughout the content series. But if, let's say, a client is not comfortable with the deal value of, let's say, an X amount, then we tone it down and then we give them touch points basis that, which caters to their advertising needs as well, and which is in accordance to the deal value as well. So it is
great.
seamless that way.
Awesome. In terms of this space, obviously it's competitive as well. There are different shows, and in terms of the people, also the recall value is kind of because
Very true.
they're distracted, and also what kind of like challenges you face in that way? Like obviously because it's something like even as a viewer, when you see an integration is similar, something you've seen earlier, then you cannot switch off from that. So you have to keep integrate. So like how do you go about, like you can cover maybe obviously challenges, also like a process that you kind of follow to improve constantly.
Very rightly pointed out, Nikhil, because the world of media, the world of content is a bloodbath in today's day and age. So it's not just television or it's not just OTT that is competing for attention. It's literally the smartphone device that's in your hand, which is just showing you a constant barrage of content through a swipe of your thumb every instant, right? So you're flooded with content. The challenge for marketers in today's day and age is to cut through this clutter and fight within the same attention span, which is just so less. And I feel, in my experience, the idea for that would be to just connect to the essence of the lifestyle of the consumers. Because unless it is targeted specifically to the cohort, it could be a millennial cohort, it could be a Gen Z cohort, it could be an amalgamation of different cohorts. My advertising won't stand out, or my content won't stand out. So that is one of the most pressing challenges, where it's just so much of content out there. Even in television, there's so many channels, so many shows who are having different format. So it's not just copy paste of one specific integration onto another property or onto another broadcast network. So I have my own programming content limitations. Within that, my challenge is to ensure that the content integration or the kind of business solve that I'm creating for a specific brand could be as seamless and organic as it can be. Oftentimes, we as brand solution managers have to play a dual role of someone representing the content as well as someone representing the sales. And oftentimes, these two divisions are not in the same sync. Because my programming team or the content creators team would be the custodian of content. That it should be clean, it shouldn't be undisturbed, and that makes perfect sense. Because after all, the original proposition of your brand, of your channel, is content. People are coming to your channel for the content. Brands are riding onto the salience of the content. Brands are riding on top of the stickiness of the content. So that is a challenge. And this also involves the brand managers, the custodian of the brands, to ensure that the stories of their brand is not just pertaining to their products or services. Essentially, it should be very functional. There should be a compelling story. And once the story moves from the product bit to a larger emotional bit or a larger cultural ethos, that's where magic starts happening. That's where the stories become very compelling. Think in terms of Pidilite. Like, for example, what Piyush Pandey back in the day conceptualized the ad for Pidilite. You would have seen that ad, very famous ad.
The Fevikwik one?
The Fevikwik one, the Fevicol one as well. Series of ads.
That's right.
Those had a very strong cultural nuanced insight at the heart of it. So it's not plain Jane advertising where you use this product, it just fixes your object and you're good to go. There's a very strong ethos of bond that's getting at the fore. So that's another challenge number 2, where brands need to come up with a proposition that is connecting to the larger emotional ethos of the audience. Because content is precisely doing that. Content is storytelling. Content is connecting to what's prevalent in today's day and age, whether it is acceptance towards LGBTQ, whether it's becoming more progressive, more liberal, women in the workspace, all these pressing issues. Brands need to sort of uptake themselves. Brands need to up their ante so that there is a amalgamation in the kind of content they're aspiring for.
That's right.
This is the challenge.
In your generally like your process you follow like
Yeah.
generally like for example like marketer like generally I work in B2B, so we
Yeah.
have like a marketing strategy. So we will create like okay, we will have an email marketing happening, or
Yeah.
we'll have your social media, this is happening, we'll create some collaterals and all that. So what is a general like go-to thing for you, like in a strategy, and like what are the elements within it for as a brand solutions manager?
So the first bit or the holy grail for every brand solution manager is to
Yeah.
understand the brief
Hmm.
of the brand that it's trying to cater to. So the brief can come directly to the brand solutions team or through a sales channel, right, who are out there in the field scouting for different prospective clients.
That's right.
Once we get the brief, I think it's imperative for us to see beyond the brief, because the brief is written by some person with their own thought process or with their own lens. A brand solutions manager has to wear the hat of a consumer insight miner, has to wear the hat of a marketer, and has to wear the hat of a content curator.
Okay.
And in the intersection of that, you would be able to create solutions which is tick marking all of these things from the brand point of view, from the content point of view, from the platform point of view. So going beyond the brief is a second step. We gather insights, we use different frameworks that help us understand the big why. It's usually said that if you ask why 5 times, you would really get into the insight of the specific problem.
That's
So we use those tools, we interact with the agencies, we interact with the clients to understand what is the deeper problem they're trying to solve with the product. What if the product wasn't there in the market? What if the service wasn't there in the market? Would there be any change in the general lifestyle of the consumers? So these questions, asking these important, relevant, applicable questions, make us come one step closer to the deep core insight. Now, once we have the insight in place, we then scan the content. We then understand the kind of boundaries that we have in terms of content,
right.
because it cannot
So
just
for
be
the
used.
users is very important, because it's not like you just integrating an element like
Absolutely.
a gift hamper or something,
Oh, yes.
or something, an integration just coming on screen.
Oh, yes.
All these questions have to be asked, then you can create something which is more appealing than
Absolutely.
that plain Jane kind of things like
Oh
that.
yes, oh yes. And gone are the times where the brand managers would be satisfied with just a hamper integration,
Yeah.
or something which is usually done. Because
That's
the
right.
more and more we're moving ahead in this entire timescape of AI-driven, digitally heavy marketing era, the more things are getting outdated. The more disruptions are happening with the kind of advent of ChatGPT and the generative AI and a lot of automative tools that we are seeing. I feel in the few years to come, things might get very automated, or there will be programmatic advertising in place where the subjectivity would just get reduced. And although the creativity would still be in place, because the creativity, what a human mind can bring into, an algorithm would still not be able to achieve that.
That's
An algorithm will be able to fasten the process or make it streamlined.
Yeah.
So hence it becomes very important for us to understand the restrictions of the content that I have, get the insight from that, marry it with the insight of the content that I have, and then create solutions for the client. And that would again be deployed in different directions. TV is my primary medium. Can I do something in OTT? Can I do something in digital? Can I engage the audience through a specific social media engagement? Can I take that into an offline route? Can I route that into a radio route? So then options become infinite that way. But everything is helmed, everything is pegged on a big consumer insight. This is the overall flow for us to crack a brief.
Okay. So from there, then I will ask you about a campaign of yours, which you
For
feel
sure.
you can talk about has been successful, why it was
Yeah.
successful, and how did you go about it, and what connected with the audience with respect to that.
I would take the example of Maruti Suzuki. Maruti Suzuki was a sponsor on Indian Idol 13, the presenting sponsor.
That's it.
And the brand that it wanted to spotlight was Maruti Suzuki Brezza, which back then was a newly launched SUV. And it was a very holistic approach that we took to not just give them a frequency builder approach across the episodes, but also a content creation bit as well.
That's it.
So Maruti Suzuki was very interested into creating content for them, which will resonate with the aspirational millennial audience. Because Brezza is one such car which is not just about your features, which is not just about the technology. It's also about its head turner looks. So hot and techy was a brand proposition for that. And we really dissected into that. We brainstormed with the brand managers, the agencies, to understand what in its essence is the core proposition for this car. We understood the consumer insight, we understood the brand proposition, we understood the larger ecosystem of the other cars who were in the competitive space. And Idol is one such show which is really all about dreams getting fulfilled. Like the most watched and the most eulogized, singing reality show of the country. We have top of the notch singing talent out there. Can there be any marriage with this aspirational car vis-a-vis these top contestants who are representing not just their background story but also the talent of the highest caliber?
Also in Indian Idol, I want to point out that generally when you see reality shows, you say up to 40 or 45 minutes of the demographic. Here, since they were old gold songs and all, there's this huge, like, for example, like parents also, they are watching and they are watching reruns of it and all. And positive, like it's not about controversial elements and all this. So it's this is something which was actually good for a brand to join.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, so it's music. Music is one such thing which cuts the clutter of language, and it just demolishes barriers because it connects directly to the hearts of people, right? And every episode, as you would have seen, is thematic. Some would be Kishore Kumar, the other would be some other famous singer, and all of that. Music, keeping music as the epicenter of that, and using our star-studded contestants, we created a one of its kind music video for Brezza, and it was literally at the insight that aspiration is something which is key to buying the specific car, and also to these contestants who are trying to achieve their dream to become the musicians for tomorrow or enter the music industry, which is coming in. And that music video, making that music video, conceptualizing that right from the lyrics to the shoot to the production to the overall ethos, I think that was a journey itself. The video has racked, I think, over 5 million plus impressions across social media handles. And it has garnered immense appreciation from the client, from the agency, and from a lot of people who've come across that. So this is an example of a very insight-driven and a very.
And when you're seeing it, you don't feel it's like any brand indication or the car is in your face. It's so clean and flowing, and even the performance, the contestants and all is very natural. I think a lot of effort went into that because they're not actors per se, right? But then the way it was shot and they had that screen presence, and it was just going with the flow and how the car also was working within that.
And that really reminds me of the third hat which a brand solution manager has to wear, apart from being a content miner, apart from being a content curator. It's the execution hat. Because after your idea is locked, it is not coming to fruition unless it is executed in the way it was pitched. So execution again becomes the most critical key here, and this is precisely what was highlighted in that music video. And we're very proud of this asset because everywhere we go and we have a discussion, this becomes our key asset to highlight that, hey, here is what we can actually do for a brand, which is literally at the cusp of a story, which is aspirational. You listen to the lyrics, it says Aasman se aage. So it's hot and techy, which is just about the car. But if you were to just buy this car, you would really be upscaling your level of a lifestyle. Aasman se aage means literally going beyond or reaching that stage of affluence or reaching that stage of experiential lifestyle. And that's the insight that we roped in, and then married that with the aspirational aspect of these singers, and who did a kick-ass job in terms of the singing, obviously.
Awesome, that's right. What do you feel like? Obviously, we learn about brands and what it takes to create a great brand. I always feel like not only if I'm talking as a marketer, I feel you can like people creating 100 people can create the same product, but the brand that they create is what is selling it. Like you can create Adidas shoes, maybe you have a factory, you can create in 500 bucks also, but then how is it that they are selling that at 5,000 or something? So over a period of time, and also we've seen so many examples. These are the really huge like D2C brands that have created some amazing brand. Like Boat would be the most
recent one.
Talked about because obviously also in Shark Tank. So what do you feel like now you've worked in brand solutions in terms of a strong brand, what all it creates, like what goes in behind that?
See, the most iconic of brands, Shoe Dog, just the book that's coming into my head, right? Nike, you take the example of these premium brands let's say a Tiffany or maybe a Louis Vuitton or any brand. Just talk about any brand that has created that cult effect into your consumer's mind.
Yes.
The idea or the deeper insight out of that is that a brand is first created in your head before you even experience it or feel it in your hands, if it were a materialistic product. And marketing, I think, starts after that perception in a consumer's mind is created.
That's it. Yeah.
And here is where a deeper insight of the culture is required. Talk about any brand which is doing great work. They have literally identified their niche or a deeper insight through the culture and created that mindset in their potential consumers. Whether it's just holding back the production. I think, for example, there's a luxury brand which creates a sense of scarcity in terms of its products. Scarcity so much that a consumer might have to wait for years to get that particular product. So they would probably understand that this is just so unique or just so aspirational that they might as well just buy it right now.
So there are only like say 10 pieces available in a year,
yes.
so you have to be part of those guys too. Like you lose out if you don't.
Exactly. Brands like Gucci, brands like Louis Vuitton, and just so many other luxury brands. They work on the fundamental aspect of scarcity. Tiffany, for example, right?
Like for example, I like the Bugatti brand of car.
Yeah.
They do a vetting process of the clients.
For sure.
So they I don't know what it's all based on, but then that creates that concept. I mean, that level of status. You need to own that. Like it just commands that respect when you have that car.
Oh yes. So it's like personalization. It's like ensuring that a specific brand creates to an aspirational aspect of a specific consumer cohort, and that's when the product comes into the scene. Think in terms of Apple. The kind of story that it propagates. It's less about the product. It's really more about the aspect of how any product of Apple is the right fit for you in terms of its class, in terms of its creativity, in terms of its minimal excellence. And that connects to people across TG. Why do you think there's a craze for a smartphone which is a lakh and above? Just because its aspirational value is just so much. It's probably creative, utility is just so much. It's probably the class that you keep an Apple phone onto the table, and you just kind of get that self-confidence or an ego.
It's like you feel when you watch the keynote, you're like, okay, I'll just have a look at it, and then you're by the end of it, when do I go and order it and all like that. Urgency, and it's like out of your budget also, but it creates that. People take like loans and all everything to buy that. So
yes. And it takes time. It takes a lot of pivots for a brand to reach that stage. Think about Apple. Think about Royal Enfield. Think about even Amul. These brands pivoted a lot back in the day, and it's not just the logo. So just track the kind of logo changes which a Google underwent or an Apple underwent. Every logo change implies a different sort of strategy which they're trying to undertake. Minimalism is now all about a higher aspirational ethos and less of frills. And it also helps in the logistics. It also helps in the economy of different campaigns because that stays constant across mediums. So that's how brands reach that cult stage, in my understanding.
That's right. Your career is also interesting in terms of you studied in food technology, and I think you work in manufacturing ITC also.
Correct.
So, what was your firstly motivation to pursue the MICA course? Obviously, everyone was very difficult to get in college also. And in terms of, I think many of the leaders in many of the youth like Fang and all, they have come from this particular B school. So firstly, what was your motivation to join that do an MBA in that particular? Is it called an MBA in that?
It is an MBA. It is a PGDM in strategic marketing and communications. And it's probably one of the best in terms of the kind of curriculum that it has.
For marketing media, I think is the best
absolutely
college within India.
Yes.
So what was your thing that okay, I'm going to get into marketing after a few years in food technology?
So to be honest, it wasn't really planned. And my gig at ITC Foods in the manufacturing space was right after my engineering. And I remember it was the first campus job which just came, and pretty much the entire college sat for that. And it was only open for boys. And I knew for a fact that, okay, right after my engineering, I need to understand the application of the processing bit, which I've understood.
Mm.
Because what got me into this course was the love for food, the love for cuisines, the love to see the fact that food is not just something to be consumed, but there's an element of art into that. There's an element of a lot of science and explorations into that. I still remember this quote from my mother. She would say that a kitchen is pretty much like your chemistry lab. The way you would experiment in a school chemistry lab, it's a similar way you would experiment with your ingredients. So that curiosity led me to go for this course and probably see this as a viable option as compared to a computer science or maybe an electrical.
It's not mainstream, right? Food technology.
It's up and coming. It's up and coming.
Okay.
It's back in the day, I think it was just starting up, and Ministry of Food Processing Industries had conceptualized this institute, National Institute of Food Technology, Entrepreneurship and Management, the name of my institute.
Okay.
And I was from the first batch, 2012 to 2016.
Okay.
Yeah, so we were the guinea pigs in a way, and all of the experiments were done for us. But nonetheless, it was an enriching experience to oversee the production and the manufacturing of Sunfeast pasta and Yippee noodles back in the day.
Okay.
And I was based in the biggest factory, which was located in the outskirts of Bangalore. And if you just overturn the packet of Yippee noodles, you'll find Malur factory, and that was the factory where I was based. Right after that gig, I joined a startup which was doing a very innovative work. It was based in Ahmedabad, and it was called Nomba Candies, and it was trying to create a vegan gummy candy that would cater to an affluent class. Why vegan? Because Gujarat is a generally Jain market, right?
Yeah.
And gummy candies, if you see the likes of Haribo or gummy bears, they have a non-veg ingredient in that, collagen, the pectin, right? So the idea was that we remove that element and we create a gummy candy which is catering to the nostalgic flavors. Let's say kacha keri or a spicy guava or a cola. So for the Gen X audience of today, these flavors would be the nostalgic flavors for them.
Yeah.
Which is something which Paperboat kind of did that.
That's
So it was somehow going into the same space, creating a gummy candy of the nostalgic flavors. And during my time there, I was overlooking the sales and marketing, the different channels, the brand story, the content creation for this, literally right from the scratch brand. And I was introduced to cultural branding back in the day. How cult brands, and I was just talking about that a few minutes back, how the most successful brands have cut across the clutter of communities and of sects and of TGs by tapping into a deep cultural truth. For example, Nike. I'll take the example of Nike because it's one of my favorite brands. Nike figured out that it's less about their shoes. It's about an intrinsic urge to break through one's barrier or break through one's limitations. Right? Shoes are not just something that is very functional in terms of footwear. Shoes are something that would help you unleash the best version of yourself. And in whatever pursuit you are, whether an athlete or whether even an athlete, a sprinter or maybe a sports person or maybe a long jump athlete, your shoes is the medium that's giving you that kick within. And once you tap into that truth, your product just becomes an aspirational medium for the consumers to buy. And it gives them the inner sense of purpose. Always remember, a product is not something that you would, obviously you'll be using it for a utility, but the reason to buy is not utility. The truth is people buy things with an emotional bent more than a rational bent. And that's the deeper understanding which I got back in my time at
And for market is very important that to understand this, that even when you are purchasing things, what was it that made you purchase? Not only marketers, I think even aspiring entrepreneurs.
Oh, yes.
What motivates you to spend that money on
yes.
that particular product? Analyze that, and then obviously you get better in these skills of what is going to really work in the market.
Oh yes, and that's where all these touch points come into the play. That's where the field of retail marketing comes into the play, because that becomes my primary touch points for the D2C brand to have the first level of interaction with the consumers. You go to the Walmarts of the world, and the best of store interactions would have cues, would have visual signs, which will just grab your attention in a way that will make you curious. And here, we call this as moment of truth in the parlance of marketing. Here we haven't even talked about the product. It's just the curiosity that just is lending me to the interest stage. There's an IDA model that awareness, interest, and leading me to the final advocacy phase. So these are the different cues, as you just rightly mentioned. So going back to the story, after Noma Candies, I realized that branding is something which I'm interested in, because that helps me understand the truth of the consumer. So why does business actually happen? It's a transaction, it's a barter, which everybody
Any
knows.
product you're working on, and then you had a bit of realization or something?
The core product.
Okay.
So the MVP, the 0 to 1 stage.
That's right.
In doing that, that's where most of the brainstorming is happening. Because this was literally a startup which was just fledgling in its stage, which had just begun. The team was also very, very small. So you were the owner, or you had the owners to understand and execute pretty much the entirety of the operations.
That's right.
And that's when I realized that a neighborhood institution in Ahmedabad is doing precisely the work which I want to focus on.
That's right.
And that's where the seed of MICA, marketing, and understanding everything under the roof of branding and advertising came into the picture.
That's right. That's a great lesson. Like if you are really, deep getting into details of what so many things can open out. Like even as students, that's what I tell them. Like you explore different things. Like you have the time also in different verticals or whatever it is. But you can then discover and you take interest. It's not during half-heartedly things. Once you get in, then you realize that okay, this could be my calling or something. I'm good at this. I'm getting appreciation for this. So that's awesome. So one important aspect, like as marketers in digitalization, that has happened over the last 10 years. You like today in-house, you have so many people in digital marketing. The thing is that like even I had done one particular series where I think I covered 14 different types of marketing email. So now managing your work also is becoming difficult, because there are so many things. You have these activity headings like say email marketing, then in that there are so many tasks that you are doing. So what do you kind of suggest in terms of that? Obviously at the level that you're also working in for such a big brand, there'll be many things within that, and you're managing other people and their targets which you can't miss out, like in terms of their deadlines or whatever, or any deliverable has to be done. So what is your learning in terms of managing your work and anything like say tools you use with respect to that?
So I feel we're in a stage where there is a plethora of these tools which are available to us, plethora of these different ways in which things can be optimized. I think the first level of understanding should be what sort of tools do I really need to optimize my work. It's not the fact that just because I have so many AI tools or I have so many mediums to reach out to my audience, or I have so many mediums or channels to look for that can help me optimize. Quantity never equates quality. Please understand. I first need to understand the purpose of the very job that I have at hand. And by purpose, in a brand solutions perspective, even as a brand manager or marketer's perspective, I need to understand what's the core objective of the brand that I'm catering to. Is it a sales uptick? Is it a brand salience? Is it creating a new market generation? It is ensuring that the dominance of my brand stays. These are different problems that I need to solve. The moment I realize my task with absolute accuracy, and for that I need to mull over the problem again and again. After some time, I would realize that hey, this is an immovable aspect of the problem that I've recognized. That's half of the battle won. Basis that, I would then realize, okay, what could be the duration, or what could be the overall span in which I need to achieve these checkpoints in terms of goals. A problem identified is one part of the entire kitty that's tick marked. After that, I need to realize that how do I break a problem into an achievable chunks, which is how a strategizing bit comes into picture. Once I've done that, then I realize, okay, what are some of the tools which I can take help of that can help me fasten or make a specific process more effective. And for that, obviously, you can take help of your internal team resources, or you can take help of agencies or outsourcing it to somebody else, which just makes the entire process much more seamless and helpful. So here's the idea. You chop down the problem into achievable bits, and then do your research and get the minimal help in terms of these tools and AI plugins. Do not go for all of these tools, because it just sort of consumes so much time, and it often tends to make the problem much more complex. It can overwhelm you. ChatGPT is something which people have used or have begun using in their mainstream work. And the idea is to use it to the extent which adds on to your effectiveness, not to the point that you're completely reliant on it. Because it has to be used in a balance. You're using your creativity, you're using your insight, you're using your hustle to get things done. And certain things which require a bit of automation or just a regular drafting of things. You can give a prompt and get the idea of that,
Yeah.
and eventually
One
you
good
would
thing
have to
is
tweak
you
that.
get something in front of you. That's what I've noticed. Like, okay, if you say strategy for so and
Yeah.
so, some points are in front of you, but you're not hired for copying that and all, and it's foolish also. But,
Yeah.
But at least it's something in front of you, and then you kind of
Yeah.
you can like work further on it, changes and all that. It becomes faster.
For example, in editing,
Yeah.
I was just coming across the utility of Firefly, Ruby Firefly, right?
Yeah.
You give prompts and then certain background gets changed. Now, this is a very effective application of these tools.
Yeah.
You know, so otherwise, if you see an editor work on a graphic aspect, they would require hours, or they would require a lot of time to create that level of image output.
Also subtitling and all, when it's
That's
so much
also
time used to go in that, and
transcribing.
now it's completely automated, man.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
like, that's
So
like
understanding the utility is very important, because there are tools out there. More and more tools are coming up which would cater to a specific task.
That's it.
So if I can automate that, and like AWS, right, Amazon Web Services, it's also an example of a tool which a lot of companies are making use of. So here's the thing: you understand your workflow and then utilize to what minimal extent it's required, and then just cap it up there. Because otherwise you often might tend to lose your competitive advantage in just the hustle to get more automation there.
That's it. But anything, like say for example, I use Todoist is one thing where you can divide things into different projects, and then you have sections in that tasks, subtasks. So anything you use on your own, or I think your companies use like a work planning something with a team or something.
So Microsoft 360, I think, has a number of tools. There's Visio, where you can collaborate with different teams. If you're using in a virtual setup, you can use Visio to probably just have a whiteboard and just have that paper slip idea exchange sort of a workflow. That's very helpful, and it was particularly of help during the COVID times. Then there is Poly as well. If you're very reliant on Teams, then you can take polls out there. That's very helpful.
That is called, sorry, what is that?
Poly. It's called Poly.
Okay.
It's a plugin in Teams, I think, which is integrated with. It's a plugin of Teams only, I think, which can help you take those opinions of people. And these are certain tools. Office Suite has some amazing tools, and I'm exploring more and more of that. So people can explore more of that.
That's right. So coming to like AI, ChatGPT was launched a few months back, and marketers, obviously me, when it came, and then I initially didn't use it, but then there was a lot of chatter around it, and then I used it, like for example, like I just put the whole thing, like how do you get a strategy for this client and all, and I got that. I was like shocked also, because you don't see those things when you like Google it and all that, and it's very specific. What kind of appealed to me in that was that sometimes what happens is that like when you get a lot of options in front of you, you kind of don't make that decision. So here it's you tell me something like, if it's not right or whatever, what is your version? So I got like a specific version, like that's what the chat tool is giving you, something specific, like okay, if you want to use it or not, that's up to you, but this is a kind of version. So coming to marketers using the AI tools, a lot of tools, like even in, I think there's a tool called Mid Journey for designers and all, where you can directly get marketers, if you're working on your own, you can create a lot of these designs on your own also. So how do you feel going forward? You use it, and what kind of benefits are there? Like how can you like optimize your usage? Because people, it'll be competitive. People are going to use it. You should know how to give the best prompts and all.
Oh yes. In fact, you're talking about prompts, right? I think Google has released a position which is just specializing in prompts. I think there's a prompt specialist.
That's right.
Like now we realize the importance of the kind of keywords that you search with, and we've been using Google for so many years. I think since our school days, and now you understand and appreciate the kind of results that you get on those index pages, even though your prompt might not be very specific. And here is a case where your prompt makes all the difference in terms of the response that you'll get. So, see, this is the era of generative AI, where artificial intelligence or technology has reached to a level which has started matching the kind of productivity that otherwise we were using in a very manual way. In terms of a marketer's utility, I feel these tools would be able to assist in the overall work that a marketer is aspiring for.
That's right.
Whether you think in terms of design, whether you think in terms of copywriting, whether you think in terms of creative writing, the thing here is that it can learn from the kind of responses, or it can learn from the kind of data that's already there on the web. But it probably is still to catch up on the kind of dynamic creativity that humans have inherent in them. So there's a constant debate whether AI will replace jobs and jobs will become redundant. My understanding is that people who are not fluid, or people who are not upskilling themselves to make use of these tools to their advantage might get redundant, or might feel a bit out of place that way. And someone who is fluent with these tools, and someone who is increasing their output or productivity using these tools and creating much more effective campaigns, or much more compelling, let's say, even presentations, that person will have that edge. So the times to come is calling for our ability to understand how do I smartly and judiciously use these tools, so that my overall productivity is having a blend of my authenticity, my creativity, my intuitiveness, and I can also use bits and pieces of these tools. It's just like using calculator. You have a mathematical flow in your head, and you have a way to approach a specific problem with a mathematician's point of view. Calculator is just an aid.
That's
Never let these AI tools become a clutch, is my understanding of that. And moving forward, all of us in the marketing fraternity, and I believe even in other fields, we need to understand the precise utility of these tools and use only in those specific instances where it's required. I think in other places, most of our systems would be in place, and human capabilities, human creativity would anyways be able to sort most of these things out.
That's
This,
right.
I feel, would be the way to go forward on this.
That's right. I feel like there, in terms of your work, like a more business approach, like what the person is accepting. Like for example, in this, like when you are designing, you're a designer, you are making a thumbnail.
Yeah.
So what would it induce for that person to click? That there has to be a deeper understanding in this than the AI.
Yeah.
So that it doesn't replace you. You have to really look at what is the output for
Oh,
the
yes.
person. Like you have to get deeper into that. You can't say that this is my job, I've done this and all. Like that kind of hollow approach is not
Yeah.
gonna. Whoever is in that kind of mindset, or just
Yeah.
that limiting it, they are the first ones who are going to be
Oh, yes.
affected.
I think this is the era of decentralized technology.
Yeah.
Everything is democratized. The tools that are available with me are also available with you. So you can't just sort of half-ass into things, or you can't just probably just superficially do things,
That's
because the other person might be upping their ante and probably producing a creative which is far more compelling and has that creative edge into that. So for that, I need to really understand my strengths. If I'm into any
Output is like if you're a content writer, you will create
Yeah.
5 articles. I, without even hiring, I can create something
exactly.
with the 10 different prompts. It's not
Yeah.
like the same thing I take.
Exactly.
So now it's like, okay, but what is my purpose for that article?
Yeah.
Is to get the traffic from it or whatever. So that should come, that the writer has expertise. I will try to, I'm ready to pay that guy, but
Yeah.
he should get that. It's not just the output. That,
Yeah.
okay, this is produced at a decent level. Okay, it's
Right.
readable, it's a little bit interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
So human expertise,
Yeah.
human creativity combined with the efficiency of a tool would give outstanding results. That's the equation of it. And at every stage, this should be the thumb rule. It should never be the case where you're just relying on human creativity, because gone are the days, because we've been using that. And now is the era where you are just surrounded by technology, and it's just out there in terms of giving you the right effectiveness and enabling you in different ways. Vision Pro Plus, we've just heard the news where
yes.
Apple has released another headset,
That's
and the application of that is tremendous. We've heard the different use cases of Oculus. Think in terms of how Apple would be taking that a notch above. Think in terms of how this particular place where we're sitting, a boardroom, that would probably become virtual. And
That's
tomorrow,
right.
maybe you would be conducting a podcast in a remote place, and then still having that human interaction.
Yes.
So to think in these futuristic ways, and yet utilizing the essence of the humanness of things, is something which everybody should keep in mind in whatever business they are.
That's right. There's one very important thing which I feel like, especially the Gen Z, when this everything is, they've come in the digital age. There's everything. There's an app for
Yeah.
it, or you can go it. you think like even I think Mark Zuckerberg, he did a podcast recently. He said that in the last 15 years, people have lesser friends
Yeah.
compared to that. So
Yeah.
I mean, with social, do you think like utilize these things really properly, like what it was intended to, and we have actually regressed from the result that we see with all these things.
It's very paradoxical, to be honest, because we're just talking about technology, right? And the
Yeah.
application of that, that's a dark side of technology. And this
Yeah.
reminds me of a series which I keep on thinking very often. It's called Black Mirror.
Yeah.
Like the episodes, if you see, it
Okay.
showcases certain scenarios which are not very fictional. I mean, like
Mm.
it can really be a probable case in the few years to come, or even
That's
in current scenario. I think it calls for us, as much as we're moving in a very technologically first space, where we're seeing the likes of Tesla, where we're seeing the likes of ONDC, where we're seeing the likes of headsets, AR and VR. It also makes sense for us to understand the ethics of using this technology.
Mm.
It also makes sense for us to preserve and protect and cherish the humanness and the connectedness of a human emotion.
Mm.
Because this particular technology is being made or being fabricated with a sense of intelligence. It can read human emotions, and all of us know through the prompts or through the responses of ChatGPT. There's so many articles written out there where people are afraid or people are skeptical that these responses are very affective or human responses. If a code or if an algorithm is giving me such close responses, tomorrow imagine if it's implemented in a robot or if it's implemented in a machine. Could that be an outcome of, let's say, what was shown in a movie like iRobot or what was shown in a movie like Matrix? That's something which we as humanity should be very wary of.
That's right.
So that is my understanding, where technology should be used in a balanced way. And I'm sure the ones who are at the helm of it, the ones who are conceptualizing this, have this thing in mind. Where as much as we are progressing, so should be the appreciation, or so should be the connectedness of human endeavor into the
That's
things.
right. Because then it's like hollow connections also.
Yeah.
Like you have
Yeah.
so many people following you on
Yeah.
Instagram, or you have a lot of connection on LinkedIn. Actually, you're not getting. So then it's something like an AI comes in, which is like you're chatting with it.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is more human than the actual. So that is what is. I feel that is where somewhere like we can't take everything as transactional.
Absolutely. Very rightly said.
Somewhere we have to look at other things also, and like you can't get to uh, focus, like even when you're doing a podcast and you're
Yeah.
proceeding, it should be like something about networking beyond.
Oh, yes.
Like I feel there should be more beyond your job and this thing that will come to also your
Yeah.
what all you do and all.
Yeah.
So it's more fulfilling when you do this.
Exactly. So you talked about Gen Z, and
Yeah.
this is the cohort that is digital first. It's
Yeah.
born with the devices, the iPads, the smartphones, the social media apps, literally around them.
Yeah.
And as much as I'm seeing or working with this cohort or creating solutions for this cohort and having a keen observation around the trends of this cohort, it's all the more important that with access, you should also educate these people, or you should also sort of ensure that the creators of these technology ensure that there is safety around the usage of this, or there is judiciousness around that.
Okay.
So Android, if you see, it has a cutoff mode, or it has a Zen mode, right? That's OnePlus, I think. So that ensures that you are taking time off from a device. There are different ways which shows that, okay, you're using so many minutes or so many hours onto a specific app. So hey, it's probably time for you to tune it down. So as much as convenient it may sound, it could also lead to you cutting down on real human connections.
Yeah.
Like I think we millennials who were 90s kids, I think we are the last generation who had a childhood which was just pretty much outdoors, and we would go play cricket in the evening, and we would just be outdoors playing badminton, running, or just being out there. In today's generation, people would probably play Fortnite on their iPads or on their PS5 and would probably let go of a physical exercise. I think that's a little drawback of that.
That's right.
That's where the policy.
I've actually observed this, like when you have like in your colony, you have a playground. And
Yeah.
I remember a time when I was, after say 5 o'clock, you are playing till 7 or 7:30, and now the playgrounds are empty. I've seen those things. So like, what are they doing? Where they're like home video games and all with their friends and all. So That is the kind of
That's a hint to a trend which is not very welcoming. I mean, like technology is welcomed, but the focus on the real life connection, on the real life activity shouldn't be lowered, because it adds to your overall upbringing. It adds to an overall shaping of a personality. That's
right. That's right. Definitely a well-rounded. It creates that more happiness when there's just beyond earning money or paying bills, when you are living and connecting. And I've seen that with a lot of artists and all. When I'm connecting, there is more beyond that. Like there's more on that connect with the humans that is there. So. You had a very interesting post you had done on LinkedIn, and one part of it was like a formula, which was very interesting to discuss. So you had said insights plus plan action plus past learnings minus bias equals value creation.
Correct.
So this, if you want to elaborate on this.
See, as I said in the earlier part of the podcast, and it's also true for life in general. I think any action or any vision that you have in life, and a lot of the CXOs, a lot of people who've made it to the higher helms of different companies swear by it. Your action should have a very strong foundation of a purpose. A purpose, again, is fueled by an insight. That if I'm achieving that purpose, again, if I ask a question of why, it'll give me an insight. Why that purpose? Why not somebody else's purpose? The insight could be as simple as that, okay, it connects to me in my fundamental values. Hence, it becomes that purpose. Hence, it becomes for me to make sense to invest efforts, energy, and resources into achieving that. And that's where, if a lot of people find synergy with that purpose, that becomes a very solidified team effort. That's where you see some of the most successful startups coming up, some of the most successful companies coming up, because there is a unison, there's a constant resonance of a purpose across everybody's minds. And that's where people start, thinking or working beyond what is just transactional. I think you just rightly mentioned, it makes sense for us to think beyond what is just obviously visible. That's when purpose or insight kicks in, right? And it fuels you into creating that action. And once you're into an action mode, it's imperative that we cut out the bias. It's imperative that we cut out aspects which actually make us human, but they are slight flaws. Because oftentimes when we work with different people, we work in different setups, we work even in different cultures, right? We come with a certain painted thought. We come with a certain prejudiced mindset. It is very normal. The fact that it shouldn't be there, or the fact that it is there, is wrong. I think it's an incorrect statement. The fact that it is there, and how do you manage that, or how do you ensure that it doesn't become an impediment while working with different people, that's a question to be asked. So if I remove that bias, if I have an insight, and if I have an action, I think I'm heading towards a lasting solution that way. And what I've realized after working in different setups and different companies and different sort of people, and even in my personal life, living in different states, because dad has been in a job which was demanding transfers in a very frequent notice. So that actually led me to experience different communities, different cultures, different cuisines. One thing which stays constant is that if you approach or if you connect to people without a bias and just engage with them as if you're engaging them with a blank slate, and ensuring that you're just so keen and willing to understand their story, that creates the most lasting of connections. And it's without a doubt that this also translates into business settings. That if I'm someone who is having a business proposition, and if you could be an investor, or if you could be a client, if I'm approaching to you not with an objective of exchanging X amount of money or doing dhanda, or maybe just to contribute to what you're doing in terms of achieving your goal or adding value to what you're doing, I think that would create a much more value-based win-win situation than the other way around.
You think like a purpose would correlate to ambition, and then you changing yourself for that in terms of like upgrading yourself? Like say if you are not, your communication skills are not good, but I want to become an anchor somewhere, so I will work on that. Or as a marketer, if that design aspect of mine is weak, it will show in my work, so I'll work on that aspect of myself. So enables you having a clear purpose that you make changes to improve yourself. Like that's a constant thing. If you don't stay in your comfort zone, you get into those uncomfortable. You don't have a problem with that because you know that will kind of grow you.
Absolutely. So I'll take an example of
Yeah.
a startup. All of us know about entrepreneurship. It's pretty much a buzzword. I think even we've passed that buzzword phase.
Yeah.
With the advent of Shark Tank, it's even more out there in the dining table conversations of the middle class and pretty much the nation. The most successful of startups who cross the 1,000 days mark. I think there's a saying in Gujarati that if you are able to cross 1,000 stage mark, you're able to sail through. I don't know the Gujarati translation of that, but it's a very meaningful quote out there.
Around 3+ years.
Yeah. Okay. So that's where you've seen that pivot. That's where you've seen the downfall. That's where I think there's a value of death as well, and you cross over that. It's I think also true in the relationship sphere as well.
That's it.
The most successful of startups, they're able to sail through because they have their anchor very solidified. They have their North Pole figured out. That, for example, if it is, let's say, Zomato, or if it is, let's say, a Swiggy, they want to ensure that the food delivery business is as seamless as possible, or nobody should stay hungry. It could be as simple a proposition like that. Or even for Airbnb, probably it could be the fact that nobody should be hunting for a shelter. Or it's communities when people look for shelter in different places and not just a place to stay, which is where it steps aside from the hotel business. If I have a North Star which is very constant, then I will be able to pivot along the way. Every bump or every obstacle won't impede my progress ahead, which is why if you read The Lean Startup, or if you read other books on startup, 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel, it is often recommended that startups do pivot. You might start off with a one specific school of thought, and it's often noticed that it is not the one that will stay till the end. Most often, it's seen that what you began with is completely different with what you are right now. Think in terms of Facebook, right? It rechristened itself as Meta. And earlier, it started as Face Smash, which was pretty much a college dating site and pretty much like face-based matchmaking website.
That's right.
Look at the journey that it has traversed.
Yes.
Did it stay constant to the proposition that it started out with as a dorm room website? Certainly no. And now it is more of a tech company. And it is still sticking to its core ethos of making communities come together.
The founder somewhere, he doesn't have an ego in that. Like I want to keep changing. That also is a part of it. Like it's not that sometimes you can just take it, oh, this is my baby and I can't change this thing in it. Like you're too much close to it. Like they also say the art, you should separate your art as an artist. So,
John Mayer, one of my favorite heroes, and I really look up to him as a guitarist. He said that art should be destroyed, and this is part of his Berklee School of Music lectures. Like you might feel very attached to your art, or even in business setup, you might feel very attached to your ideas. This is all the more common in a brand solution space or any ideation-based job. You would attach your self-worth to that. You would attach your ego to that. You would often attach your identity to that. But it is of good merit to see the idea in its objectivity. That this idea is out there to cater to a specific purpose, and it is volatile. Tomorrow it could be your idea. Today it is my idea, and if it is not actioned upon in its right time, there is no need for us to cling to that or attach our identities to that. Now, that being said, I'm not saying that the ones who ideate or create a business idea should not take it seriously. But if you've figured out your North Pole, if you've figured out a big purpose as to why your business is in essence or existence, you should be okay to pivot it. You should be okay to ensure that with the changing times, with the changing consumer demand, with the changing different ecosystem, you would have read this acronym called PESTLE: political, economical, social, technological, environmental, and legal. All of these are factors which are constantly changing. And your business, your idea, or any venture that you're doing in the market, whether in India or abroad, is a function of all these aspects. So it's important for one to pivot, because then you're heading towards obsolescence. Recall the time of what happened to Nokia. Recall the time what happened to Xerox. Right? Recall the time what happened to Kodak. And the DVD shops, because Netflix came and broke the market. So you would
Blockbuster, I think.
Blockbuster, exactly. So you'd always be at the thread of what could be the next game changer. And for that, if you have to constantly stay relevant, you have to be the game changer. For that, you would have to be okay to change and pivot and understand and sort of figure that nuance or pulse of the market. And that's where ego needs to be stepped aside, which you mentioned.
That's right. Like in a simple words, I can correlate like a simple example. Like say you're in Andheri and you're going somewhere in Kolaba.
Yeah.
And you have you missed your some cab or some bus. Then
Yeah.
you have to look at other ways.
Yeah.
Some other public transport. Somebody can drop you, but the destination is that. But,
Correct.
you change the way. That
Yeah.
has to kind of change. So you don't give up on that. Oh, I have to can't just because one mode of transport is not there. So look at
Yeah.
other ways.
Yeah.
Could be maybe you go tomorrow. It's not possible today, but still you are on that path.
You're always in the mode of decision making, to be honest.
Yeah.
And there's something called as decision fatigue, which
That's right.
most of the decision makers face. Yeah. I think that's
Yeah.
one of the reasons why Mark Zuckerberg would always wear his gray round collar tee, because he doesn't want to spend time or energy every morning just to figure out what attire does he want to wear for that day.
Yeah.
He would just simplify it to a simple tee and a jeans, and that should be it. He's saving his resources for the rest of the things.
That's
So a part of a strong ideation, or a part of sticking to one's purpose, is to ensure how do you effectively use your own faculties, whether it's creativity, whether it's decision making, or whether it's thinking, or just really being. Because you're not just a custodian of your idea or a business, you're a custodian of your energies and faculties as well. You have limited hours each day to be your productive best. And at the same time, you also need to be aware of giving yourself the right rest, so that tomorrow you're on the same level.
Yes.
There's so many cases of burnout, right? Where
Yeah.
entrepreneurs, they feel burnout and they find themselves in that, stage of really not being able to get help. So there's an abyss that they often find themselves in.
Yeah.
I think that's where it requires a much more judicial approach. That, hey, if I'm focusing most of my energies in this idea, I'm building this, and I've probably let go of my day job, it's also important for me to take care of myself.
Yeah.
That's where self-care comes into the scene. That's where
Yeah.
even organizations...
Energy is also like, why if you get a bit of criticism and all that, why are you giving that much energy? You're also
Correct.
managing energy, like you're giving somebody who doesn't deserve that energy.
Oh, yes.
Also,
Oh,
like,
yes.
there's a criticism or there's some highly negative.
Oh, yes.
This thing.
Yeah.
That's there.
In my role of working at Sony Pictures, there's often instances where I sort of happen to see these celebrities at close quarters.
Yeah.
And there's one lesson to learn from them, that these are the people who are pretty much visible on the screen, and it's on people's top of the mind awareness. But how do they manage that visibility? How do they steer clear from negative criticism? How do they ensure that they're managing or keeping a very stoic outcome despite any backlash? That's a lesson to be learned, which a lot of entrepreneurs or managers or business leaders can take lesson from. You might be responsible for a lot of lives. You might be responsible for a lot of people and different business decisions. But at the heart of it, it's very imperative for you to keep a very objective approach. It's very imperative for you to not be perturbed by emotions. At the same time, I'm not saying that you should be stone cold. So that sweet balance needs to be discovered and needs to be applied in a day-to-day basis.
One interesting thing, like since you're working in Sony and you've been in touch with a lot of celebrities, how would you, and now the most, common thing is that people want to get content creation, YouTube and all. How would you you have to create a kind of stardom about you, like something that people would be attracted to your persona. So how would you in today's day and age define like a star or stardom, and how do you work, or what is about it?
Nikhil, I think stardom is an outcome of the good work that you're doing. And stardom is not just restricted to people in the media industry. Any person who is doing a worthwhile work, which is helping people at large, which is solving some problem, I think the outcome of that is stardom. In my understanding, a person who is just striving for stardom is just like, I want to just achieve Z without starting with A. Or if I'm at A, I'm not looking at the rest of the characters. So you have to traverse through the entire staircase to be able to reach onto the next floor. And this is the same case with stardom. Because it is something which just is visible outside, right?
Yeah.
This is the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
What is perceivable. Can people see the years of hustle that has gone into that? Can people see heaps of failures that would have gone into making that person get that right mindset? Can people see, hours and hours of preparation that would have made that person resilient enough? And that's where content creation also finds an intersection. The best of content creators, which I've observed, spend hours or spend a lot of time to master their craft, to understand the art of content creation, to understand technology, to understand production, to understand the ways in which in today's attention starved content atmosphere, how can they make content which can clear that clutter. It's pretty much like getting a CV shortlisted in the heap of thousands of CVs, right? This is where I think an effective way of approaching any pursuit comes to the scene. And once you're able to nail that, once you're able to sort of set up regime or a discipline to your craft, I think the eventual outcome is stardom.
That's right.
And the ones who've achieved stardom,
Also like star appeal,
so the ones who've achieved stardom wouldn't have definitely started off this fact.
That's
like Amitabh Bachchan, right? Look at the years of.
I think you met him also.
I had the good fortune of working on KBC 13 back in the day, and of course it revolves around Amitabh Bachchan. The kind of integrations that we do is through the man himself. So even if you look at his personality, his grand personality, it just speaks volumes of the kind of works that he has done throughout his career. The ups and downs that he has faced with tremendous resilience, that is now visible. That is now all the more inspiring for so many people.
You can
feel that aura. You can feel his aura. It's just out there. So I think that's the hustle of it.
That's it. Awesome. As like obviously you are into music as well, and we'll get into that also. But like on a creative level, as a marketer, how do you feel having some art form that you are kind of consistently doing? Could be music or dance or drawings and all this. How does it like add to you, not only marketer but as a person, also as a corporate professional? Basically?
Absolutely, that's a very pertinent question, Nikhil. Thank you so much for asking that, bro. I feel this is what I have believed in. I find myself very fortunate to have teachers and a schooling or a right condition, especially with the kind of support and motivation that my parents have constantly given me during my upbringing.
That's it.
It has.
You're from Dehradun, so that also there's a thing like people who are from the mountains, they are more inclined to the music and also.
So Dehradun happens to be a city that is known for its schooling. It has the country's one of the most famous schools, like a Doon School or a Willems. You go uphill in Mussoorie, you'll find Lal Bahadur Shastri Academy of the IES Institute and Woodstock School. All these are very famed schools. And over the years of my upbringing, I feel that that's a city that is known for laying a very solid foundation.
That's it.
But it didn't really come to me as a very entitled thing. I owe a lot to the kind of teachers, to the kind of gurus, to the kind of professors, to even my parents who enabled me to have that opportunity. So
they were not into music or anything.
My mother has learned music, so she has learned classical music. My dad has a outstanding collection of music cassettes, and he's got a amazing sense of. He's an enthusiast, and he also is a keen sort of karaoke singer. So I think the seed got laid from my parents only, and I sort of picked it up. So I began learning tabla from Punjab Gharana back when I guess I was in class 2 or 3, and it started off as a hobby, but then it became as a very disciplined subject for me because I was able
that
to.
early started.
Yes. I was in Dehradun, and I still remember those times where I would pack my tabla at the back seat of the cycle with ropes, and then just cycle all the way to my Guruji's place. And that taught me this importance of consistency. So I've learned for over 10 years. I've completed my bachelor's degree in Indian classical tabla. And it creates a sense of discipline, and it gives you a different perspective. And that is something which links me to your question, that if you're in a creative pursuit, how does it flow into your different endeavors, right? Any creative pursuit, whether it's music, whether it's theater, whether it's poetry, whether it's dance or even sports. Fundamentally, it makes you think with a very different perspective. It opens up your perspective. You are much more welcoming of different thought processes or different ways to approach
This I've
things.
observed in a lot of artists.
Yeah.
They are so open in this,
Yeah.
and in terms of that, definitely creates a great experience when interacting with them.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Art in its essence is breaking outside the box.
Yeah.
Not even thinking of this outside the box. It's probably just smashing the box aside.
Mm.
So many artists, Van Gogh, right? I can think in terms of the art field. I can think in terms of music, Hans Zimmer. Like I can think in terms of sports fraternity, Usain Bolt. These are trailblazers in their field, and it's it's easy to say that okay, they're so good in their art and they would have done outstanding work and they're just remarkable in the field. But it's also imperative to note that they are creative in their own essence because they've sort of taken an avatar or they've sort of approached their life in a way which nobody has, or they would have utilized certain thought processes or learnings from different avenues and then incorporated all of that to achieve that zenith stage. So this is the magic of art, and which is something I explored a lot during my days at Mica, because Mica in its essence has art instilled in it. That the fact that if you are tomorrow's strategic marketing and communications leader, and if you have an appreciation or understanding of art, your ideation or your approach of thinking in terms of ideas and culture and then brands and then technology becomes a very holistic and in a very unique way, as compared to someone who would just think in terms of a business objective or certain very hard aligned facts. Not that they are wrong, but what if I have a much more human aspect to it? What if I have a creative aspect to it? People keep on saying that I need out of the box ideas, I need innovative ideas or unique ideas. Please understand, a lot of these ideations come outside of your office boundaries. I remember when I was handling Idol or when I was doing KBC, oftentimes if I'm taking a stroll in my society or if I'm taking a weekend backpack trip, certain ideas would just pop up because it would be associated with an observation which is in the market.
Is your state of mind like more receptive on how does that work? Or like when you're doing that activity, the idea flows in and something.
Yeah. You find yourself in a zone, right? Because you're observant enough.
Okay.
Art calls for you to be observant.
Okay.
And open-minded. And once you're in that pursuit of creation, it flows it in the space of idea creation or campaign creation. Because your faculty are the same, you're just sharpening it.
That's right.
So hence it's of merit for people to engage in any form of artistic endeavor, because then it makes your personality not just a very well-rounded personality, you also get a perspective which is a very novel perspective in terms of ideation or in any outlook towards life.
That's right. There's just two I forgot about the which I wanted to cover. Obviously, you worked on two major shows, KBC and Shark Tank. If you could just give an example of a different kind of brand integration you had done for them each. Just briefly, could take us.
Yeah. So we had Byju's as a presenting sponsor in KBC 13.
Yeah.
And Byju's being an edtech sponsor is all about knowledge, right? It's all about education. And so is KBC. KBC celebrates knowledge. KBC places the pursuit of knowledge and then empowerment at the helm of it. So we ensure that we are creating solutions, or we are integrating Byju's in a space which becomes very aspirational, or which is very seamless that way, right? So it involved us to not just create a frequency builder ideas for Byju's across the show so that people are able to resonate with that. We also ensure that we are creating a special week around them, which makes even more sense because most of the consumers of Byju's are kids.
Yeah.
And there was one contestant who was a very aspiring IAS aspirant.
That's right.
And we sort of went overboard and we thought creatively as to how this aspirant can get value through a Byju's creation. And Byju's had come up with an IAS course back then. That contestant was roped in, and in his hot seat journey, we ensured that he gets that special course of IAS preparation by Byju's. And that was a fairly spotlight moment. It was a very emotional moment for that aspirant.
Yes.
And that got that spotlight, and Byju's got that spotlight, and it became a very endearing moment in KBC.
Definitely. That had a lot of recall value definitely.
Absolutely.
At that time. Yes.
Yeah. And even in Shark Tank, to give you an example, in season 1 itself, we had an association with Upgrad. right? Again, an edtech platform, again into something which is upskilling, and Shark Tank being, a show that's all around entrepreneurship, all around startups, and startups in itself calls for upskilling or pivoting or upgrading, because once you begin your own venture, you are subscribing to a lifelong journey of learning and upgrading yourself. Because no business stays constant. And that became a very seamless connect for us. And we sort of came up with innovative ways with the help of our programming team and different stakeholders to ensure that Upgrad gets all these major visibility points across the episodes, including us giving relevant courses to the startup founders who can then upskill themselves and eventually add value to their own businesses.
That's right.
So this is our premise, that it's not just a plain Jane integration. It's not just a business objective getting fulfilled. It's a value that is added to the show, to the content, to the consumers, and eventually to the brand and their consumers. It's a very chained ecosystem that way.
That's right. Since like you are a musician, a little bit you can talk about the role of music in this advertising, especially like, or what kind of deeper connect you create when there is a great. Obviously, you had created that song Aasman se aage. So if some great creative is made on music, and then with the connection with the audience, like little bit you can talk about that. We all remember like jingles and all that. We don't forget it, and that is such a great recall value for all those products. They've done rehashed versions also.
Correct.
Many of those brands, yes.
Yeah. See, when it comes to human perception or the mental perception, I think audio registers in a very important way. Probably even more than just visual or a combination of different sources. It hence creates a very important aspect in terms of the world of branding, how audio can create a significant impact. There's a field called sonic branding, in terms of how brands can have an audio touch point along with the other touch points. And brands like HDFC, brands like MasterCard, brands like Zomato have explored that. Here is how sound can be intelligently tweaked, and it can be devised in a way which is not entirely music, which is going all creative in terms of creating textures which you hear it in your actual song, but is also keeping in mind the essence of the brand, right? And then amalgamating that with different touch points, whether it could be a smartphone, whether it could be a TV ad, whether it could be a social media campaign, or whether it could be a different offline engagement. If I play around with sound intelligently and I create probably certain signatures or probably certain soundscapes which can register in the audio spectrum of the consumers, along with the visual cues, along with the experiential cues, I'm creating a very strong touch point here. I'm creating a very strong ecosystem of salience that in any way possible, as a brand marketer, as someone who understands sensory recall, I want to occupy my brand's recall in all of these touch points. Audio, sight, maybe even experiential, maybe even auditory, right? The odor base. You go to Starbucks, you go to Cafe Coffee Day, the kind of fragrance that you find there, it's not a very coincidental thing. It has been worked upon. It has been thought through so that it just recalls you of a Starbucks environment. So sound definitely is of a big essence.
They will play, I think, some music in certain cafes and restaurants to set up the mood or something like that. It is within like your marketing or your brand and all.
Correct.
Definitely. That impact that music has, like in that movie 99 song, there's a very famous dialogue that he said music is like one of the last bit of magic in the world. Like that's why country has a national anthem, not a national speech. The way it can move and motivate people. So if you correlate it to a marketing videos, that is what the end, the motivation and the action they have to take is with a great music piece.
You know what? Because music stirs emotions. Like none other. And if I can have a brand speak about that, that brand is stepping aside from its functional aspect. Always remember, brands who have stood the test of time, or brands who have really registered in a very solid space in the minds of the consumers, have moved aside from the functional bit to a much more purpose-driven branding. And music is a very essential vehicle for that. Because through sound or through an audio spectrum, I can stir a lot of emotions. I can maybe even cut the language barrier.
Yeah.
And that's why I can go beyond the boundaries.
That's right.
So, those jingles, those musical logos, or any piece of work which these brands have done have been very judiciously and meticulously thought through. Why this aspect of music? Even in Aasman Se Aage, we went through multiple iterations to land into that right ethos of the music, which is aspirational and which really inspires you to really go Aasman Se Aage, and which justifies lyrically and sonically. So that's why I think it's all the more imperative for brands which are up and coming in today's day and age to always think about sound. How can you tap into this aspect of branding? People might go TVC, people might go through different vehicles of advertising, but how about a sonic branding? Yeah. So that becomes a very important aspect.
That's right. And let's say the last, definitely we will try to hear a little bit of your the music that you created and all. So as a little bit about you as a musician, what all instrument you played or where all you performed and all, a little bit.
Sure. So I am a percussionist first. I learned tabla for the longest time. Have learned it for 10-11 years from Punjab Gharana. My Guruji Shri Gurmeet Singh. He taught me the foundations of Punjab Gharana. And for a few months, I was in Varanasi, and I learned from a very known exponent of Banaras Gharana. So I understood a bit of that school of tabla as well. And over the years, I have also tried to ensure that I'm putting myself out there on the stage, because an important part of an artist's journey is to have a public feedback of the work. You definitely start off as a student and you learn, you have a lot of bedroom recordings, you rehearse, you put in a lot of hours, but at the end of the day, art needs to be exhibited so that you become receptive to feedback. Good or bad doesn't matter, but the reception of feedback is very important. And I think that ability to seek feedback also flows into your aspect of being a marketer or any business related role. Because the more you are receptive of seeking feedback, the more you are accelerating on a path of pivoting or changing and becoming better yourself. So I have performed at All India Radio. I have performed at Speak Making back in the day, and over countless occasions at school and university, and all of that enabled me to understand different genres. You jam with different people. You compose different things. You are in a different sound setup or different ensembles, technically to say the least. That gives you a different understanding of sound and how musically you have to collaborate. Again, it's bringing in that ability of collaboration. So because it's not just your piece of music, it's not just somebody else's piece of music. When we say it's a band effort, it's pretty much like teamwork, which we see at workplaces, because there is one consolidated sound that's coming out of the speakers.
That's right.
How that intersects with each other, how that blends with each other, that's a very good exercise of understanding teamwork. So that has been my journey, and I think guitar came into the picture when I was probably in class 7 or 8, because I was doing a lot of Western music back in the school days. There was a lot of choir work, there's a lot of orchestra work, and I realized that this instrument is capable of stirring a lot of emotions. And I used to listen to a lot of classical music, which my dad collected back in his days. We still have the cassettes of Bach, of Beethoven, of Paganini, of Mozart, and all of that. And I, as a curious kid, would just take out one of these cassettes and just spend hours listening to that. And that really laid the seed of Western music. And guitar then came in as a coincidence, and I started taking lessons after the school. And it was just a short duration that I took lessons, and that gave me the inspiration to learn it by myself.
Now, how do you managing your time in terms of you're giving some time to music also? How do you manage that? Or in terms of when I interact with artists, definitely many have obviously full-time job in something else, so they have that energy just gets produced. They don't have to motivate themselves. That is what. Does that happen with you? That energy comes in, maybe if you're doing it on a weekend and all that. You might be tired in a normal due to routine activities, but you will really be energized in it to do this.
You have to take out time. That's the reality of it. Because oftentimes your work would become very demanding. You would have to put long hours. But once you get into a musical pursuit, this is what is true for me. You get a refreshed perspective. You get certain creative energies back, which you then take at your workplace. And that energy probably flows into your output, into your creativity, into your ideation, or even into the social interactions that you might be having at workplace. So these two instruments are my primary ways of exploring with sound. I think tabla is more of a percussion medium. Guitar enabled me to understand emotions all the more. And over the years, I've made an effort through the songs which are there on my YouTube channel or on SoundCloud. How can different sound textures amalgamate with each other that can make a person feel the emotions? I'm not adding lyrics. I'm essentially playing in the instrumental space, and I want to create a journey which the listener can travel and then anchor through their own emotions. John Mayer once rightly said that your music should be listenable. And that has been a constant effort to break free through the limitations of the instrument. Maybe use percussion on the guitar and then land into a genre called percussive fingerstyle music, which is a style which I've sort of practiced over the years by looking up to the likes of Andy Mackey, of John Gorham, of even Dobson. So here you are utilizing this instrument in more than just one way of playing it, not just through the strings, but through the guitar body or through using all these modern techniques. So that's the idea of it, to utilize sound, to think in terms of sound. And that's what a lot of good sonic marketing professionals also do the same.
That's it. And you must be like, you want to like collaborate, you look forward to like people coming and maybe doing some...
Yeah. Back in lockdown, I created a little property called Quarantuned. And I collaborated with a lot of friends of mine who I met during undergrad days, who I know from school days, and friends of friends who are musicians. So in just the vicinity of my bedroom, I was creating music, and it's a 10-piece property. It's there on my YouTube channel. And the idea was to just jam with them and still be in touch with our musical pursuits at a time where things were just very pessimistic. And that also taught me how the collaboration is not limited by a physical proximity. If there is a strong enough intent, especially in music, I think music saw a major uprise, or music collaboration in general saw a major uprise during COVID. A lot of people began jamming. A lot of music pieces, even including the exponents who are there in the Indian music system, they were collaborating and creating, let's say, a musical piece which has bits and pieces of their visual shots, and it is having one constant track. So at a time where I think humanity saw a very adverse time, music essentially became as a savior. And that's how you collaborate, and that's how you find that hope that, okay, there is one day at a time, or I still can make it through, or there's a brighter future that lies ahead.
That's amazing. When the Prime Minister announced that, I think that Thali meeting thing, that also brought a lot of people together. It was very emotional. So when I saw people from various walks of life, they all coming together, that's very not happening much. So that was also a great experience at that time. So awesome. Let's then hear some tunes.
Sure, I'll be happy to play a couple of tunes for you. I've got my classical guitar, and I was just talking about playing with a different set. So I'll try to play a few tunes which are in that similar space. Thank you.
So awesome. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much,
It's been,
Nikhil. It's a pleasure
Yeah.
to be
great
talking to you, and thank you so much for inviting me.
Definitely. And it's been a great experience, and definitely follow Siddharth. Your music channel
Yeah.
is there, and any other places where they can follow you.
I have my Instagram handle, and people can search me by my full name, Siddharth Rohilla. I am there on Facebook, the same name, and on YouTube. And
That's it.
if people still have another bandwidth of following me at some other place, it's on SoundCloud as well.
Okay, awesome. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so
Everyone,
much.
Thanks for your time, and see you then. Take care.